If you ask me, there's no better rags to riches story in esports than that of Super Smash Bros. Melee. Melee is a game that was never meant to be played competitively, and was never marketed or promoted as one. In spite of this, Melee has grown into a dominant force in the FGC and even esports as a whole. Even 20 years after its release date, the game still competes directly with the biggest names in competitive fighting games, and even the more recent installments of the Smash series itself. Melee's community is insanely passionate, so much so that they're willing to collect completely outdated hardware simply to play the game in its most optimal form. A community so dedicated that a man took 6 months off of his job to dissect the game's code and reconstruct it with online matchmaking and rollback netcode. With such absurd feats of passion people perform for this game, you have to wonder, why? Why do people still care this much about a 2-decade-old party game? And how does it manage to compete with the most recent installment of its own series? The answer is simple. Melee is special. Melee is unique in a way that not only sets it apart from other competitive games, but from other Smash games as well. Albeit unintentionally, the mechanics of Melee come together to form an incredibly complex, yet also very expressive fighting game like no other. This video is my attempt to get at the core of what makes Melee work and why it's so special among other competitive games. If I were to make a broad statement about what makes Melee special, it would be this. Melee's gameplay is both deep and complex in a way that breeds variety and expressiveness while maintaining a high skill ceiling. To help you see what I mean, let's take a deep dive into what makes Super Smash Bros. Melee special. Let's get the basics over with first. Unless you've been living under a rock these past few decades, you probably already know how Smash games work, so I'm not going to go over that. However, I will say something about what makes Smash's unique percentage and blast zone system work really well. The functionality of percent greatly contributes to the depth of Melee and all the other Smash games compared to a more standard health bar. This is because dealing damage is not the only thing you have to think about in order to take a stock. You also have to think about which moves can kill at which percents. This effectively adds a second layer to fighting, and because of it, stocks can be taken in a variety of ways. You can either rack up percent on your opponent until they can be killed by a safe move, or you can go for a riskier move that could kill much earlier. Or, if you're sneaky, you can toss your opponent off stage and gimp their recovery to get a kill at a sinfully low percent, though this is easier said than done. Let's use Marth's combos as a case study. At low percent, Marth racks up a lot of damage on the opponent with his chain grabs and aerial combos. He can easily seal a stock off of these combos with a strong finisher such as forward smash or down air, or by just carrying the opponent off stage and edgeguarding them. However, Marth actually has to be careful not to rack up too much damage because, counterintuitively, he actually struggles to kill at high enough percent. His moves stop comboing into each other, but they're still nowhere close to being able to kill, and the kill moves he does have are too risky to throw out on their own. He even struggles to get opponents off stage because his aerials pop them up too high. This is why you occasionally see Marth players unable to kill until absurdly high percents. This problematic percent range for Marth is so notorious that it actually has a name, Marthritis. Although this is a rather extreme example, you can see how the effects of the stage and percent system add a whole new layer to how characters are played. But what I've said so far can apply to pretty much every Smash game, and this is a video about Melee specifically. So what sets Melee apart? In my view, there are three pillars that make Melee stand out from other Smash games. These are the tech, the movement, and the combos. Oh boy, where do I even start with this one? It's no secret that Melee has an abundance of exploits. Thanks to the rushed development of the game, there are a ton of exploitable mechanics that have been heavily researched and applied to competitive play. People often accuse competitive Melee of being a glitch fest, with players at the top level playing the game in a way that seems almost alien to how Smash is conventionally played. I get why people get this impression, but I think the word glitch has an unfair stigma associated with it. Melee is technically a glitch fest, but that's exactly what makes it so cool. Competitive Melee players embrace the glitchiness and use it to push the game to greater heights. The sheer amount of tech, or glitches if you want to call them that, gives the game depth and complexity and raises the skill ceiling far above other Smash games. Fox, the best character in Melee, is iconic for his highly technical playstyle that's practically become a meme at this point, and that reputation is well earned. I could easily make an entire video just about Jump Cancel's shine and its applications. It's a get off me tool, it's an approach option, it's a great out of shield move, it's great for pressure on shield, it counters crouch canceling, it can be used for grounded combos and sometimes even aerial ones, it can set up tech chases, it opens up unique movement options, and it's great at edge guarding. And that is one move on one character. The huge library of applications for this one tech alone makes Melee Fox one of the deepest characters in the franchise, even if it was never intentional. Similarly, the abundance of advanced tech across the board is a huge component of Melee's depth, and a critical factor in the game's skill ceiling. Even to this day, new things about the game are being discovered. Contrast this with all the games that follow Melee, and we see that the technical complexity has been severely toned down over time. Like, Smash Ultimate literally reintroduced directional air dodging, but then they made sure that wave dashing would be impractical, so like, what was the point of even bringing back directional air dodging? I'm not trying to give the other Smash games a hard time here, but Melee's technical complexity is what gives it the power to stay relevant, while Brawl and Smash 4 have faded from relevancy very quickly after the release of later titles. Okay, tech is admittedly a tired talking point when it comes to Melee, but movement is where things get interesting. Movement is a key component of any fighting game. It's central to spacing and footsies and arguably the very idea of the neutral itself. Without it, fighting games would basically boil down to advanced rock, paper, scissors. And Melee's movement, for lack of a better word, is sick as fuck. There are so many movement options that add nuance and depth to Melee's neutral. Dash dancing and wave dashing are of course the big ones, but there are also more niche techniques like moonwalking and wave bouncing. The platforms add an extra layer of mobility thanks to wave landing. These mechanics not only make Melee's movement more technically complex than later installments, but also offers much more freedom. In later installments, movement is rather restricted and highly committal, which makes footsies less precise and limits your ability to microspace. Melee, by contrast, offers you almost total control of your movement, provided that you have a solid grasp on the tech involved. This flexibility enables high levels of expressiveness in gameplay, and with that expressiveness comes variety. This quick and precise movement allows you to bait out and punish attacks without having to rely on defensive options like shield and spot dodge, which allows the game to be more fast-paced and offensive without being brain dead. The amount of options and freedom enables players to perform feats of mobility and mind games that are utterly mesmerizing to watch, and absolutely terrifying to be on the receiving end of. Smash has heavily experimented with its movement options over the years, but no other game hits the nail on the head like Melee does. Combos, the flashiest component of any fighting game. I've noticed that combos, or at least the long extended ones, have gotten a bit of a bad rep these days. The prevailing logic for the anti-combo crowd is that combos lack nuance and interactivity. For the person doing the combo, it basically boils down to whether they can hit an execution barrier, while the person on the receiving end has nothing to do but twiddle their thumbs and wait for it to be over. While this is not entirely accurate, and I don't really agree with it, the sentiment is understandable. Having long, high-damage combos seems to be a detriment to interactivity to a lot of people. But what if they didn't have to be? Melee is a game with high amounts of hit stun, with no mechanics to limit the length of combos other than percent, which would normally make for a ton of easy touch of death combos if it weren't for a special hidden mechanic. That mechanic is directional influence, or DI for short. DI is, and I say this with zero exaggeration, the most ingenious mechanic that has ever been created in Smash, maybe in fighting games in general. The mechanic itself is simple and intuitive. When you're hit by an attack, you can influence the knockback angle of a move simply by holding a direction. This is useful for surviving strong hits, but more importantly, this directional influence can change the kinds of moves your opponent can follow up with in a combo. This is game-changing. DI changes the nature of combos in two key ways. Firstly, for the person on the receiving end of the combo, you actually have something to do. In fact, something you need to do. Your choice of DI will significantly influence the follow-up options your opponent has, and can open up opportunities to escape a combo that otherwise wouldn't be available. For the person doing the combo, you have to be able to react to or predict your opponent's DI, and respond accordingly to continue the combo chain, completely changing how combos are normally performed. Combine this mechanic with percents, weight stats, and the presence of platforms and an off stage, and you have a recipe for a variety of combos that can't be optimized into a single consistent series of inputs. The depth and variety afforded by the dynamic between combos and DI creates nearly limitless possibilities, and encourages players to be free-form and creative with their combo game, because there often isn't a single, always correct choice of move. This, along with the movement, allows for Melee's expressiveness and variety. I hope you're not tired of me using those words yet. Now, all the preceding Smash games have DI as well, but it's most influential in Melee. I honestly think that DI is such an incredible mechanic that even traditional fighting games could gain a lot from experimenting with it. Traditional fighting games have tried a lot of different ways to create combo variety, but none of them are as simple and elegant as DI, in my opinion. The combo game is easily one of the most attractive qualities of Melee. In fact, I'd even go as far as to call it the defining system that distinguishes Melee from more traditional fighting games. Well, I hope I've made my point clear with this video about why Melee is so unique in my eyes, and fully deserving of the attention it gets. Melee is not only special for its high skill ceiling and advanced tech, but also in its freedom and expressiveness. I remember an analogy that Prague made about Melee in the Smash documentary that really stuck with me. He said something along the lines of this: traditional fighting games are like classical music, but Melee is like freestyle jazz, and I think that's a perfect analogy for the kind of game that Melee is. Now, do I think Melee is a perfect game? Oh god, no. In fact, Melee is deeply flawed in a variety of ways to me. But Melee has something that's worth more than the sum of its pros and cons. Something that means so much more than differences in ledge mechanics or character balance. Melee has depth, and it has it in spades. Of course, Melee isn't exactly one of a kind anymore. Plenty of new games are coming out that have taken Melee's fundamental mechanics and adapted them to fit their own vision, and I think that's great. In fact, I think many of them improve on Melee. Perhaps one day a newer game will rise in popularity and usurp Melee from its throne as the king of platform fighters, and I'm excited to see that. But whatever that game may be, Melee will always be the original, the progenitor, and for that reason, it will always be special.